Alejandra, thank you so much for joining us today on the What is a Good Life podcast. Having shared a number of spaces with you in various forms of dialogue and so forth, I've been really looking forward to seeing how this conversation plays out today.
Yeah, me too, Mark. Thank you.
So, as you are aware, we kick off with: is there a question you're exploring as you move through life?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, it's if I, yeah. So it's more than a question. It's what is the question today, sort of thing. How am I moving through my day? Or maybe that is the question. Taking it to the daily life use of my energy at this moment. It's been for a while. It's been for the past year, more intensely, more clearly. Um, so all the questions, or most of the questions that I try to bring to my life, are around that big theme. So, do I really want to do this today? Is this coming from a place of truth within me, for example, or how can I be softer, or what is the least that I can do today? Like I play with questions a lot, actually, because I think sooner in my life, more than I want to acknowledge this, I learned that it was important to ask questions. I did search for answers a lot, and I suffered for many years in the search for gurus and masters and mentors and guides and all the ones that would have an answer for my life outside of me. Uh, I can say probably more than half of my life I did that. So I was not really paying attention to the questions, but looking for answers. And when I learned that it was important to ask more than no, I think I started to shift that slowly, and now it's really sometimes about the quality of the question that I'm asking. Maybe I change a word in my own question, or maybe a friend comes and tells me, "Hey, why don't we, instead of asking that, ask this?" And so I even bring that to conversations with those who are now truly uh, speaking the language that I want to speak, maybe. Yeah.
Can you tell me or give some context for that sense of suffering through seeking answers, just in what you referred to there in terms of gurus as well?
Hmm. Yeah. I looked up, I mean, the background is like the background that can be for most of us humans, raised by parents uh, who would tell us what to do. And I quickly picked up as a child that I needed to be a certain kind of person or behave in a certain kind of way to comply, to be a part of, like the long story of belonging and being seen as a child, all of that. So I think I developed quickly a sense of observation that is not bad at all. Like I like to be a good observer. And I've been also told that I'm a good listener to some degree, I know. But, so those are qualities I appreciate from that upbringing. The flip side to that, the one that is not so nice and that brought me to wanting to search for answers outside of me, was trying to be a good child in front of my parents' eyes, basically. That's where it all started. So I became a perfectionist. I became a good role player in the scenes of my household. And at school I didn't do so well, but it was like it was part of the game. It was part of the story of, so yeah, if my mom or my dad wouldn't say it was good, then it wasn't. I stopped, and it was the truth. And so the same happened with any sense of authority around me, anybody. And in my culture, we are taught to respect adults just for the sake of them being adults, and the total opposite mostly around children. So we are not seen as children. I mean, a child does not have a word or a say in this story. You eat what I tell you to do, you dress the way I want you to, so that cuts a lot of who you really are from the start. And and so I found my ways to trying to comply with this puzzle I was given in my house, in this family, and I learned to play it very well. And one of them was, okay, um, you play these cards, you find the ways, you comply, you ask no questions. There's nothing in you that will say how things are done. So it's quite, yeah. I think it was very, very deep in my sense of who I was from the very beginning in my life, that, yeah, I didn't have any questions to ask, or if I asked them was just to confirm that my actions were the right ones, sort of thing, or be told what to do, really.
But for you yourself, then, when did, even as an adult, then the awareness that, okay, I'm not asking questions presently. I'm more seeking answers. When did that develop?
I want to believe it traces back to the years when I was becoming a more mature teacher. My background, my professional background, academic background, is in the teaching of English as a language, as a foreign language in this case. And so I was the best student. As a teacher, I needed to do a lot of research, prepare a lot. I really, really enjoyed my job and the work that I could do in the classroom with other people, both the students and my colleagues. So, in that world, inevitably, I want to believe, I came across people, authors, um, all kinds of things, all kinds of content that would allow me to say, oh, this exists. This is, like, there are other people with other lives in other parts of the world. And I started to see how to navigate my teaching world with better questions. And I did research as a teacher, quite a lot, more than the average teacher in my country, I want to think, at that time, maybe. And so it was active in my head when I got an invitation to do something, to ask the better questions. So it was more on that field rather than my personal life. Um, it took many, many more years for me to break the pattern of wanting to search for those gurus and mentors or answers, or the professional who would give me the right answer. I mean, the answer I wanted to get, because it was very intense for me through um, personal events that happened recently in my life, less than 10 years ago. So in this past few years, it's become very clear to me. It's more about the questions than about the answers, or it's more about where I want to stand in this story or in this situation, rather than who's going to come and tell me what to do. So it's a lot of layers, really, over the years.
And was there a particular feeling you can recall in some of these realizations, like a particular moment, even?
Yeah, I would say many. It was many moments of frustration, of me wanting to, and not feeling that I didn't have the resources. I think that helped me. It pushed me hard because I've been quite intense in, I love to find resources in general. Like um, it's something I've done all my life. And I didn't know that until recently also. I mean, some years ago, I learned that about myself. And so the stronger the frustration with trying to find answers, um, for my kids, for my children, for how I was even parenting, mothering, as I prefer to say, how am I being a good mom here? Am I making the right decisions? I questioned everything. So the dance with questions has been rough, really, because in my experience, I put myself in places where everything I did was questionable. And that was it. Sometimes I was aware, sometimes I wasn't, but that permeated the entirety of my life. So questioning my own decisions was like, oh, that was the go-to. And so I started to question my own questions. I think that's where. And then I got tired of, oh, I want to get this answer. I want to get my children to feel better, and I have no resources for that. I want that person to come and tell me how to do it better. So the frustration of not being able to get there, um, brought me to sitting with myself, really, and just say, well, maybe I can decide something different. Maybe I can just try. Um, Try this and see what happens, and it was more actionable. It was more like those other questions. What is my intention here? Or how do I want to stand in front of my children as a mother? Do I want to connect with, how can I connect with them better rather than just tell them what to do as I grew up, like. So there were many instances of, through my parenting, I have to say, where I think I learned that.
As someone who has become a father just in the last couple of years, the question, the I can the questioning around parenting, that seems to be a big. It seems to be like a real white heat to that. Uh, that area, to be engaging with questions, and even the way you were describing that, the questioning of the questions, and the seeking of answers externally from that. How did you begin to find peace within that process?
Hmm. Oh man. Oh, that's a big question because, I mean, for me, it's taken years, years really, to, and I continue to build upon that, understanding that trusting myself is okay. So maybe that is the key. I had to work through so many situations that slapped me on the face, like those moments, those instances of, oh, I need this, and not getting it. And then out of deep frustration, just sitting in my bed, crying on the floor, or just you know, not receiving any echo from anybody, the moments of deep silence, um, or loud, just too many voices in my head, and then saying, hey, stop. What if I don't do anything? Or what if I just observe what my children want to do? Or what if I try the other direction, So, and I forgot your original question at this point, but I think it's just too many places that I go quickly in my head, that bring me to those, places where I was hurting too much, and then building that trust in my decision making, um, that hasn't been easy at all. Just staying away from people who would easily come and tell me what to do. I mean, not necessarily tell me what to do, but give me their opinion. Just learning, oh, this is just your opinion. It's not what I should be doing, for example. I mean, it's as basic as that. And I would teach my students, my former students, you need to differentiate between a fact and an opinion. Like I knew stuff that definitely I could not translate into my life, my personal life, because I was part of that system, right? So just saying, hey, I'm not really hurting anybody. I'm I'm just trying to live a life the way I think I want to live it for now at this moment. So there was, now that I remember, there was a moment some years ago, because I suffered a lot of anxiety by trying to do all of this, right? I wanted to be the perfect mother, and I wanted to be the perfect everything, period. And that was not paying anybody any good, right? Not me, not my children, not anybody.
This, what you're pointing to, just in terms of, you knew in school when you're teaching your kids the difference between fact and an opinion, and the significance of listening to too many, or realizing that people just have their opinions, but it's not necessarily helpful for you to be taking it on. Really, but just what's quite clear is just the intensity of that experience, or that refining of moving back into a place of trust with yourself. Like,
Exactly. Yeah. Hmm. Yes. And trust is a big, big deal, really. For me, I want to say for me at least, it's been, um, the greatest, possibly one of the greatest explorations I've had to endure, and I continue to do that, much less aware today. I'm very confident these days about my own decisions, about the questions that I'm asking myself to navigate difficult moments. I can even see moments of, let's say, anxiety or depression that I have to go through. I don't have to, but I go through on and off. And I see them for what they are. And I'm grateful for that. And I, have this conversation, this dialogue in my head is different. It's very different. But because I took distance from people and situations, I actually I've been living the past few years quite enclosed in my own, even physical space, very far from most noise from the city, from events and people. It came without me deciding to do it very consciously. It came out of fear and terror and circumstances and resources. But at the end of the day, I turned that into what I like to call cocooning for myself. So I've gone over periods of, say, 3 years, and then there's a shift, and then another 3 years or 2 years, and I am like, oh, look at that, like that's what I was doing. That was really what I was doing. So learning to trust that my decisions have a purpose, really, whether they're mistaken or not. I sit with those and see either whether I want to, you know, congratulate myself for what I did, which is part of me building trust in that, in myself, or question it just because I see the resonance is not there. Say, in a person that I may have hurt, mostly my children, they mirror me so easily that if I don't pay attention to them, I would be missing most of the lessons that I have learned. I've missed a few, but I continue to sit with that and apologize and say, hey, I'm sorry. Just that was not okay. You know, and we have the loveliest conversations. I think with each of them, I have possibly the best memories of what a great conversation can be with another person. Yeah.
There's something I'm finding in my life that I find really beautiful, that if a relationship needs some tending to, the depths that it can go to thereafter are just far more than what I think we go to in our general. If things skim along the surface nicely and there's no need for a rupture and a repair, um, that's one of the things that I take a tremendous amount of solace for whatever occurs in life, just the capacity for that. I'm though really intrigued not only by your idea of cocooning, because quite clearly, when you're talking about too many voices, I'm really intrigued though about the moment where you create some space, and you said, you were crying in a room, but you weren't hearing the echoes of anything coming back. I thought that was a beautiful sentiment. And I'm just thinking even of myself recently, and maybe asking God or something or somebody for some response. Just curious as to your navigation, even of a moment within this, when even when there was maybe some space that a signal or a sound wasn't coming back.
Hmm. It's actually difficult to recall. Uh, but now that you mention this idea of God, or as anybody can call that, and I do, and that was one of the biggest shifts actually, and maybe that this is what answers a previous question of yours. When I was invited to search within myself through a larger force, I'm going to say, it was in this moment of breakdown, and my life being broken into the smallest pieces, as I recall. um, I was completely lost. The story repeats. When you have no sense of self, or sense of whatever it is that and somebody comes and invites you to search beyond that, and to forgive yourself, and to all these concepts that I struggled a lot at the beginning, and I continue to explore these things, and I am still, like, oh, I've come to terms with a few things now, like this idea of forgiving another person, for example. Uh, I'm not gonna go there, but the thing is, the dialogue was, oh, so if I look inside, really, I'm connecting with something beyond myself. And I was frustrated again by not getting any answers. I was expecting a voice. I was expecting a feather falling in front of me, just saying this is the right answer, or that's the right way to go. And that was also intensely at the beginning, as it would. I was seeing answers everywhere, you know, from spirit, from God, from the Holy Spirit, from this and that. And I was like, oh, I'm special. But when I hit the wall over and over and over again in daily life and in my relationships, and I saw no changes. I was like, this is, so what is it? What is it? And so the noise started to come down over the years. I started to get more into my body. That was a big one too, because I was completely disconnected from my body for a good while. And I took, for example, the practice of dancing in my room every day in a very small space, whatever space I had, just to do it on my own and just feel whatever came out. And I would sometimes sit and cry after a session of dancing. I would sometimes feel excited and ready to work. Or sometimes I just didn't want to do it, but I did it anyways and follow the music. And so I started to find, I think, what now I want to believe are more the languages of connection with that source, with myself. And so the channel got stronger and easier for me to understand. And I think that's what lowered my anxiety about it, about getting the right answers again, like just finding the right guidance. Because I went from trying to find it in books to people to energy that I didn't know before, So it's still the same. The difference has been understanding over the years that first, I have the right to listen to myself. And second, that if I make a mistake by following my voice, um, I can learn from that. And it's okay because never will my intention be to hurt anybody by any decision that I'm trying to make. And that I know about myself, that I can trust. I will not make a decision to hurt you. But if it happens, I'll pay attention and be there and show up, like that kind of, oh, okay, I need to negotiate every single day with all these voices. And many times it wasn't, um, successful in my view over the years. And then now it's second nature. Like many things that used to be a big deal for me are like, I think I've even forgotten about, like things that used to get me occupied every single day. But that was something that really needed to happen for me because I was coming from a lot of hurt and a lot of things to get off of myself, really.
There's a beautiful kind of arc to what you're describing, though, in terms of, giving yourself the space to be with yourself, giving yourself the space to feel whatever was going to come up, whether it was enthusiasm or sadness after dancing. And I don't know, I think there's something when we give ourselves enough space that I find anyway, like compassion seems to just go hand in hand with a little bit more space around what we're doing. I think you mentioned something about how what something you felt was a turning point in terms of how you'd relate to your own children, just that sense of really noticing and paying attention. And I don't know, it made me think of a good friend of mine who's a fairly well thought of psychotherapist who said to me shortly after Ava was born, he said, always remember whoever you talk to, and nobody spends as much time as you do or knows your child as well as you do. And I don't know, I just thought that there was something rather simple with that. And if we even extend that to ourselves, nobody, nobody can know what the hell it's like to be Alejandra or to be Mark. Like, we can exchange as much information, we can talk about things as much as we want. Nobody knows what it feels like to be in my body. So
Mm,
there's something what you're talking about there that just has such a kind of a natural returning to. You've said a number of sentences, though, that I wanted you to elaborate on, the
mhm,
significance of, one of which is that you gave yourself the right to listen to yourself. That
mhm.
sounded like a very powerful sentiment to notice.
Yeah. Yes, yes. And I feel that deeply. And to be honest, it's the very first time ever I say that out loud. I don't even think I have thought of it. It just came out. Um, but I deeply feel that because of my story, basically. And without getting into the details, it's simply the story of many women. I can represent thousands and millions, I would say, of women around the world who are who go from this um, background that I described at the beginning. Being told what to do, what to wear, how to speak, how to behave, what grades to get at school, how to be the perfect child, whatever, and fit, and you transfer that in your personal relationships with partners. So if I want to count and think of a proportion of my life, it's been more than half of my life, and mostly my adult life, being in relationship with others where my voice was not heard, where if I had an opinion or said anything, it was always, as I said, questionable or put into a closet, or like all the kinds of things, disregarded, or maximized just because we wanted to, others would make fun of it, like whatever, different kinds of reactions that wouldn't be what I have today. Just plain listening from the other if I want to share anything, and no judgment whatsoever. Like, really. So, without me knowing that I was living that way, I lived that way for so long. And my entire body and mind and mindsets and emotions would revolve around my partners and other people around, you know, us. And so it was when that broke finally, when I was finally out of those relationships, I realized there was so much for me to find out. And that's the process I've been referring to of the past few years, where I had no idea who I was. So I learned I had many rights I didn't live by. And one of them was that, right? So, and so I'm quite, I try to be as careful as I can possibly be with my giving an opinion about others' lives also, or even my children. That is harder because I do have to make any judgments, any a thousand judgments every day for me to, help them. But also them have reflected beautiful things about eh, my own growth. I want to say my own change about it. And just the fact that we can talk about mistakes together and say, hey, like my son last night, he was like, hey mom, you keep exploding a lot when but yeah, but I'm, like, I'm doing better. Yeah, you're doing better, but you still have these reactions. And so we put those things on the table without judging the other to the degree that we make the other disappear or feel bad per se, and we question each other's, to just to be observers of our own behaviors and learn from that. So going back to the right thing, feeling the right, yeah, it's a big one. Just to be able to stand for myself, stand on both my feet and in the terms that I want to and can at this point. Like, these are the resources I have. This is how I think I can navigate it. If you're going to come and help, welcome. Let's see how that looks. If not, leave, you have more things to do, and I do too. And I love what you said about only we know what it feels like to be in this body, in this mind, in this house, in this family. We are the only ones who know that. And to stop listening to others' opinions is just as practical as, trying to keep our hygiene daily. It's, I take a shower because I live in a warm place. If I don't take a shower every day, I'm gonna stink. So I keep my closed door. That also was a big one. Just finding physical space for my own and starting to set physical body boundaries that as I said, I was not very aware, like moving far from my family or moving far from others and staying more at home than having, and fortunately my job allows me to do that. And like kind of grounding myself in a physical space that I cherish, that I nurture, that I make look the way that I want to. I And then, who am I going to invite in here? Do I want to invite you, them, really? And so I've ended up spending more time on my own than with other people, to be
Yeah.
honest.
I think though there sounds like quite a sacredness or a sense of ritual to that. You also had me briefly self conscious of. I think I wasn't too prolific with showers last week, although it is a little bit colder here in Berlin at the moment. Um, I'm I'm really intrigued. Was there a moment where that realization of various rights that you became aware of, was there an emotional reaction to that at some point when that realization dawned on you, or how did that kind of come into your awareness, I guess?
What comes to me right now without thinking, it's one particular moment, uh, which I've had trouble sharing, very specifics. But my dad would be, um, who I thought was the biggest protector of my life, of me, of my children, and particularly in this period that I'm talking about, where my life completely changed without announcement. And there was one, and it was a very difficult situation we were navigating as a family, and it had legal implications. It was beyond my roof. It was way beyond my roof. Delicate, big decisions to make. Um, and you can imagine coming from this, and I was still very, in that ocean of, I don't know what to do. The lawyers have to tell me what to do. And my dad, who is working with them, he's going to guide me, and I'll just follow what they say. But there was one day when I called him and I said, "Hey, I don't want to do that. I don't really want to do that. I really want to do this." And he started screaming, and like he was very upset about what I was saying to him. And that was the way he would do it. Like he would scream for a second or two and say, "Hey, but why? This is not the best." Da da da. And I was like, "Okay, I'm listening to him, but I'm not gonna change my. I'll stick to this because I feel I have to do this." And I was so scared. I was very very scared because he was he was like my idol and he was my protector, and I was like, "Well, whatever." And so we stayed quiet for a moment on the phone, and then he calmed down with the softest of voices that he would easily have to, because he was very sweet also, mostly. He told me, "You know what, love? Do whatever you want to do, and I'll be there for you." That that was a big moment in my head for, oh, really, I can do whatever, like I can do whatever I want. And I'm talking almost 40. I was almost 40 years old, two children, legal stuff going on, having to work my hours to get a salary, to support my family, all the things. And still being the child internally who would fear her parents, because they would be the top voices in my head instead of my voice. But so little by little I learned I can actually say what I think, and to I can actually try and do and see what happens. And people got upset with me, mostly around those who were close. They would still continue to tell me, "Oh, you're not doing the right thing, you da da da, well, you should go in this direction instead of the." And so I practiced. I practiced what I was reading about, what I was, trying to figure out in my own ways. Uh, how does that look in real life, in 3D, in from words in a book to, or a video on YouTube about what I think is happening here? Because truth be told, I watched a lot of videos to tell me what to do, also, like what is happening, what has happened to my life, and why am I here. And so all this thing about trauma, and even that now is like, that's not part of the conversation anymore. It's just like, in this moment of, I respect you as a human, I respect you, will try and do the best you can. If you can see me for the same, I'd appreciate it. If we cannot connect in those terms, let me pass you by. And it's much easier.
I the the roles that we play in this world, and parent and child and our children and so forth. I'm not saying that there's an easy place to get to where we completely drop out of them. Um, but I think there's a significant moment in our own lives where we start to become more curious about each other, or we start to move into a place where we see each other more as humans.
Mm,
Just and even you described it beautifully as well with your own children. That sentiment of putting it on the table, and it's not about judging each other. I really think this is one of the areas that we've got such considerable capacities as humans to develop, and to develop the quality of relationships that we have as well. Because I think it's so totally underappreciated, the significance that if we can talk about something while not taking up positions, while not pointing fingers, or whatever it may be, if we can truly just see each other as another human being dealing with a very unique human situation. I don't know, there's such a breath of fresh air or an exhale. When you tell me your father's response to that, I just was just like, my eyes were moist, but I also had like just a softening in my chest when I heard that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, because it's the sense of being seen for whatever it is that is happening within yourself, and that can be seen outside, because so much is happening inside of ourselves that we are aware, that we're not aware of, but that the other would rarely be able to see.
Mm.
And just a tiny percentage of that is actually seen. And I've seen how mature my children are. Sometimes they show more maturity than I can, to be honest. And like yesterday, and spend the more time you spend with your children, the more lessons you're gonna have at your disposal. And it's your choice whether you take them or not. And sometimes you just quit. I have to say, sometimes I just don't want a mother. I just want to be Alejandra, and I want to be on my own. And I love to spend time with myself now more than ever. So, and do other things with other people too. But and that is also a big one for me, because I spend so much time and so much intensity taking care of them and focusing on them and how they would develop out of fear. I mean, all of this is out of the fear that I would carry. And then I realized, um, also little by little and through my own health, that slapped me on the face a year ago. Actually, this week, I'm celebrating, I want to say, a big shift in my life, whether it's for better or worse. It's more for better in the sense that um, it accelerated my understanding of so many things, really. I was still paying so much attention to the way that I was raising them, the way that I would, just trying to be the perfect mother again and again, still, and abandoning myself so much, still so much. And so, yeah, children are the best reflection of our growth, I believe. If you have the opportunity to stop, they don't want to judge. They are not ready to judge unless they learn to do that in their environment. It's simple. They won't.
Yeah, what for you, what allowed for you to prioritize more time with yourself? Like I know you're saying you've learned so much through this experience, but just what were the movements towards that?
Mm. So I see like there are three currents that come to me right now when you ask the question, when I hear your question. And one is the reality. There's just so many resources available for yourself. And I made pieces with that at some point recently in my search for wanting to get out of my victimhood, like, because that is there's a very tiny, a fine line between I don't have enough resources and please come and rescue me and help me, or a reality check. Just really, there's so much I can do with my different resources: money, people around me, my mind, my emotions, etc. So there's that reality factor we cannot avoid. We can work with it, but we cannot avoid it. Just so many resources. And I made pieces with that to some degree. There was this event that I'm referring to a year ago in my health. My body simply shut down. And that had happened to me before, differently. This time, it gave me no more options. It was life saying to me, yet again, you need to rest. you need to stop, or else, something's going to happen that you don't like. And that kind of happened, really. So the moment I learned I had to be at the hospital to be tested, because nobody knew what was going on with my body, and my body was functioning in ways that never before had it been, functioning. um, that big question mark was like, what is happening to me right now, so that I learn what. And it's the reality that I live with these days. I take medicine. I i learn, I live my days differently, just being as tender and as kind and as compassionate and as mm, loving as I can with myself, because I was put in that position. So I had no choice. I mean, and when I say that, I always think, no, really, Alejandra, you always have a choice. I had the choice to continue to live life the way I was and not see the lessons coming. And that's when all these cycles of depression, cycles of not accepting the diagnosis that now I have, it's taken half, the time of this 1 year period. It's not easy. Hasn't been fantastic to have been put in that position, but since day one, I remember um, the physical reaction my body had put me in a mental state. And I think we interacted a few times over those first few months, Mark, when I joined some of your calls. I would just be in like this blank space in my head, like nothing, no thoughts, no judgment. My children would even laugh at me at the beginning, and I would get upset to some degree, but they would laugh because I didn't even sound angry. And I couldn't get angry. I remember some of the audios I sent to my friends saying, hey, my son is doing this and that. And I'm like, he's doing the regular thing. And I would get upset with him for that. I'm not even feeling anything. So it was so interesting to be in that, what I referred to at the beginning as like a child's mind, where you go by the second, you go by the minute, if you will. It was not like today's, like, what's the saying? What's the phrase? You live by the day, like just today, just for today. No, just for this second, just for this, I don't know, this moment where I am. So mindfulness at the 200th level. I had never experienced that ever. I didn't know what it was like to be in my body with the one situation that would be surrounding me in that tiny space that I would occupy. And if that meant having a conversation with anybody, that's where I was. That's all I could do. I was not thinking of the dishes. I was not thinking of the school plans. I was not thinking of work. I was not thinking of schedules or the money I didn't have. I was just having the conversation. I was just listening to you. I was just sleeping or eating, like what they try to sell us in all kinds of programs, like just, meditate your life and through your life. And yeah, well, how do you get there? So I try to keep record to some degree of those sensations I had, to remind myself of how powerful that is, to live life by that, those as principles. And I feel fortunate that I could experience the physicality of that in my brain, in my muscles, because it's something that affects my muscles. And so it's like, wow, this is what it feels like. So again, my learner's mind, I think, is the one thing that keeps me alive and the most connected with life in general and myself and others. It's like, oh, okay, what is this trying to teach me or tell me?
You know, I wrote something a little while back just about a good life could be depression, a good life could be divorce. In some case, one person that I interviewed, it was sometime in jail. You know, these were all parts of everyone's lives, and they would have said that they were experiencing a good life. I'm really fascinated by our capacity to appreciate different experiences or elements of this life, and it's not predicated just on what we think we ought to be doing. Because quite frankly, if I can't engage with some sense, even in difficult times, that this is my own good life, it's just going to be a series of chasing outcomes and desired states, and even just in the act of it being a desired state will probably leave me wanting, as you kind of alluded to earlier, with that sense of seeking an answer. Just really curious to ask you, Alejandra, the question of what is a good life for you?
Hmm. A good life is the life that I have right now. And that's a simple life. I want to believe it's a simple life. I had this resolution in my head sometime into this process of the past years of rebuilding and finding who I was. And I continue in that um, mode of curiosity more than searching or seeking. Yes, so it's the simplicity of things. The simpler things can be, that is a good life. That is, the less I carry, the less I do, allows for more space and more energy these days. And I'm practicing that more. The silence, as I have practiced with you and other people, it's so enriching. And silence, for many has been, or it was for me at least, like this big question mark, like, what do you do when there's silence? I couldn't be in silence at all. Not in my head, not with other people. I had to fill the spaces all the time. I had to fill my house with stuff. And I've never been a big purchaser or anything, like, or keeping things for too long, but really listening to some of the things my children, I go again to my children, because this was one of my daughters. She told me, she's the oldest, and she told me one day, hey mom, your house feels stuffed, like crammed with all the things you want to keep. And I started to observe without her, without acknowledging that at the moment. I was like, really? What do you have to say about what I have? Like, this is what I like, because I haven't been a great decorator or anything, but really I just keep stuff that is meaningful to me. And it happens to be that, yeah, she was right to some, to her observation. I was like, maybe I really do want beautiful things around me and not so many things that I keep just because, and put them in my shelves. Um, so just to take that mindful decision without it wanting to be anything in particular necessarily. I think that's the big thing. It's learning that I just want to do it today. Maybe tomorrow it's not going to be the same. And that's going to be fine too. Like today I want to decorate. Today I want to keep stuff over there. Today I want to get rid of my clothes. Or today I want to go out and spend time in nature or write. Or maybe I don't want to write, and that's okay, because that's another one, like judging every single decision. Oh man, it's tiring. It's exhausting. And I would fight even my creative side so much. So I'm like, you know what? It, you're doing it the way you want to do it. That's fine. So that is a good life for me. Being able to practice that right that I referred to at some point in our conversation, the right to be who I want to be for myself, to the closest to me in this period of my life, who are my children and some friends and family, but mostly for my children, because I know they're watching me and they feel everything, or most anything that I bring in our environment. Because I've that has been proven over and over and over. If I stay quiet, something's going to happen. If I say something, something's going to happen. And so seeing them change through my behavior and not my words is amazing. I think that's possibly the best reflection of my own changes, right? So that is a good life, just to practice all these things in my daily life, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally echo the significance of children just watching our behaviors rather than listening to our words. But Alejandra, thank you so much for joining us today on the What is a Good Life podcast. There's so many moments of just deeply human observations and realizations. So I'm really grateful for you joining us today.
Thank you, Mark. I'm so happy to have this conversation with you.